Good evening and welcome to another episode of Territories Talk. I'm your co-host Shaina Smith-Archer, and here with me is my co-host Thomas Famous, and giving apologies tonight for Eden from Cayman Islands. He is on vacation, a much needed break, so he'll join us back in a few weeks. All right, over to you, Chris.
Yes, good evening, and welcome to, I think this is probably our 20-something episode of Territories Talk. We began last year, beginning of August, now it's the beginning of July, and we've had one episode every other week consistently. So that would mean 20, roughly 22nd episode. Tonight is a very special night by two accounts. We are welcoming our very special guest, our brother from our sister territory in Turks and Caicos Island, Brother Damian Wilson of Radio Turks and Caicos, who has been a valuable assistance to us with resources, with knowledge, and with information. Welcome to the show tonight, Brother Damian.
Thank you so much, Honorable Famous, and of course, thank you very much, Shayna, and good evening to everyone watching. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday. It's great to be here. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to a great show.
Yes, and so the theme of tonight, which is the theme of the show in general, but the theme of tonight is Caribbean unity. Now you have three of us from three different islands, all under the same regime. And tonight's special guest, we are hoping to have the Premier of the Virgin Islands, the Honorable Dr. Natalio D. Wheatley, who is just finishing another meeting. But in the meantime, what we are going to be discussing is some recent events in the Caribbean, some events. Damien will bring us up to speed with some things in Turks and Caicos, and I could bring up to speed with the recent CARICOM meeting. So we'll start off tonight with the newsreel, very short newsreel, and then we get into some regional discussion.
Okay.
Yes, very short newsreel about things going on. Especially the one which is most recent. We had 17 young Bermudians literally sail in a ship from Bermuda to Turks and Caicos Island, and they have, from what I understand, they had a wonderful time there, and they are now sailing on their way back from Turks and Caicos Island with some of that Turks and Caicos salt that I understand.
I hope so.
Yes.
So, Chris, what was the occasion?
The occasion was it was to mark, as you know, there's a lady by the name of Mary Prince. She is one of our national heroes in Bermuda. She was a person born into enslavement, and she was born in Bermuda, maybe about 5 minutes from where I live, actually. And during the course of her life, she was mistreated just like all the other slaves. And at one point in time, she was taken by the Darrow family, which is a prominent name in Bermuda, down to Turks and Caicos Island, Grand Turk, Soul Key, to rig salt her mother, and her sister, Rebecca. And from there, she was taken to Antigua to do manual work again. And then from Antigua, she was taken to London. Notice I used the word taken, not she didn't get on Liad or Inter Caribbean or anything like that. She was taken by force. But
It
while she was
wasn't
in
willingly.
London, yes, while she was in London, she actually wrote an account of what it was like to be a slave, enslaved in the British Caribbean, Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Antigua, all were under the British flag at the time. So her book was actually used by the abolitionists in England to let people know what slavery was really about, and that helped to spur on abolition in 1834. So Mary Prince is not only our hero, but she's recognized in Turks and Caicos as well as
Mhm.
being part of their history as well. So the young people sailed on a ship to reenact not necessarily the enslavement part, but reenact what it's like to sail from Bermuda to Turks and Caicos, what it's like to take down Bermuda limestone, to bring back salt from Turks and Caicos. And they went to some of the historic places in Turks and Caicos Island. So one of the shows coming up possibly in in August or September,
Mhm.
we're going to look to have some of those young persons on to talk
Awesome.
about their experience. And it was headed up by Dr. Theo Francis, a friend of mine. He actually teaches history, African American and Caribbean history in uh, university in the States. So we're
Oh,
looking to have them on one day to help to give more substance to what I just spoke about.
that's awesome. Just the fact that they're doing it in terms of, again, recognizing the history. So it's like that's one of the most practical history lessons I've ever heard.
Yes, it wasn't just a book. But
Hmm.
before I go any further, I just want to take a moment to thank the hundreds and thousands of people who have now become our fans on
Yeah.
Facebook. They are now following our page. The
Hmm.
hundreds and thousands of people that have been watching the episodes for the last year. Without your support, the show would be nothing. And we
Thank
want
you.
to thank our media partners,
Yeah.
ZJB Radio in Montserrat, CBN Radio in Virgin Islands, Channel 82 in Bermuda, PJFE in Saba, Cayman Road in Cayman Islands, Caribbean
Hmm.
Broadcasting Corporation in Barbados, and Radio Turks and Caicos in Turks and Caicos.
The Turks
I
and
think I may
Caicos
have missed
Islands.
one.
Oh, I think
So
you got everybody. You can't Saba
that
already.
that was a long list.
yes,
Yeah, and we still missing one of the OTs, so we're working on it.
right. But the fact of the matter is that with these media partners, not everybody gets to watch the show when the show is broadcast for various different reasons.
Hmm.
But a lot of people watch the rebroadcast, whether it's via radio or whether it's via television or WhatsApp or however they watch it. The point of the matter is that it speaks to the ethos of this show is that Caribbean people working together to inform and unite our Caribbean people. So
Definitely.
I just want to thank that. We
Ideas
just
for the
want to
night.
thank them. We want to thank you, and I call him my mentor as well, Mr. Chris Jarrett of Radio Turks and Caicos, who has embraced us as one and given me some very good pointers as to how to improve the show and go forward.
Yeah. Yep. That's good.
So Damien, over to you. One of the challenges we've had is that we haven't had someone consistent to tell us, inform us of what's going on in Turks and Caicos Island. So I now turn it over to you, my brother.
Well, one of the things I'll add to what you said a minute ago about Marie Prince is a lot of persons don't know, the capital of the Turks and Caicos, Grand Turk, was once called Grand Key, and that's where Marie Prince first landed in TCI. And if you read her narrative that she wrote about her experience in Turks and Caicos, the one thing that stood out to me, and I've never forgotten it, I read her narrative years ago, and it was, she said, "Oh, how I hate that wretched Grand Key." So it that just stuck out to me. She hated TCI with a passion,
Mm.
and it was because they treated her really bad. She talked about how they had to dive rocks from sun up until sundown to build walls and all of these other different things, and they would be in the salt water with holes in their feet, and it was a cruel existence. It was a really cruel
Wow.
existence.
But
But
one of the things
what's
that
happened?
just jumped out at me, guys. Sorry to interrupt, but the fact that she was literate and able to read and write. Um,
She was.
was there schooling? Was there schooling for slaves at that time? I don't know. I don't think so.
I
I
think
don't
she
think
did
there
it
was.
illegally at the time.
She taught herself. She was probably self taught. Wow.
Well, I don't know if she was self-taught, but I know from reading other slave narratives, there were persons during those times that illegally taught slaves to read and write. So,
Mm-hmm.
it could have been that, because I don't recall her saying that in her narrative. I don't recall her speaking to how she actually got an education, which is actually quite interesting,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
that you mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's a part of our history. It's a part of the Caribbean history. And I always say one of the things that we don't do enough as Caribbean people is take stock of our history and the tides that bind us together, because there's a lot, that a lot of commonality. And Honorable Famous and myself, we speak about it all the times, where houses were literally lifted out of the ground and taken from TCI to Bermuda. um, and a lot of people don't know that there are houses in Bermuda that literally came from here.
They were relocated. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
after the salt industry. But in terms of what's happening in TCI now, today the Ministry of Health actually put out a release, to let the public know that we're actually investigating a possible suspected case of monkeypox. I'm hoping that it's not the case and somebody just happened to be a little sick.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, with COVID going on still, and there are other things out there like malaria, dengue, and now monkeypox. It's just the whew, health right now is just a frightening time for
Yeah.
persons.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing you can do is try your best to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You know. Now, the as I mentioned to you guys when we were off air, the government is having a press conference tomorrow. The premier will be making some announcements in the way of some projects going forward. In particular, the government is looking to launch a government project delivery unit that would be responsible for delivering and implementing on government projects. Implementation, especially uh, when you listen to the CDB meeting that was held in TCI, implementation seems to be one of the key problems of the region in getting certain policy initiatives across. So
Mm-hmm.
TCI government has taken the step of creating a delivery unit that will be responsible for taking things from business case to finish line essentially. So they're going to be responsible for the process and ensuring that departments and ministries get things done. Now, hopefully, that means more effective use of public funds, um, because oftentimes what happens is that you have departments that list projects in the beginning of the financial year when they're presenting their budgets, and you find that those projects don't go through, and departments or ministries are returning monies to the consolidated fund. And I always see it as unfortunately not effective management of or not effective project management, not effective budget management. And so hopefully this new unit changes that.
Mm-hmm.
There'll also be some announcements, I understand, possibly in the way of things to do with the economy. As we know, inflation is impacting the world right now. In the U.S., unfortunately, if inflation goes up in the US, the Caribbean is America's backyard, and whatever happens in America tends to trickle down to us.
All of us.
And
Mm-hmm.
inflation is no different. And TCI is seeing increased prices in stores. Like I literally went in the store one morning, and by afternoon, the price on an item had gone up like by $5. So
Wow.
What?
I literally watched the price. Like I went to the store, checked the price, went home, came back, same item, didn't go anywhere, and the price was different. Now, what happened was
Wow.
the the store got a delivery or a restock of that item, and apparently the new stock cost more to bring in, so the item went up on the
Oh,
same day,
wow.
right? And I remember one customer in the store actually arguing and saying, "But I was just here earlier, and it was at a lower price, And the guy
Hmm.
said, "Well, unfortunately, the price has gone up."
Wow.
What?
Oh,
I
What?
don't.
For those that don't know, what is the population of TCI?
Prior to the pandemic, we were roughly about, I think the mid-year estimation was about 45,000, with the bulk of the population being on the island of Providenciales. The second largest population set was here in the capital, Grand Turk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your
And
main
we've had
industry.
a. I
Sorry.
was going to say we had a significant exodus of persons during the pandemic, because our population, unfortunately, is the local population is quite small in comparison to the foreign population. We have a huge foreign workforce,
hmm.
and so when you look at that, I think the local population is somewhere. Don't quote me on this; I could be wrong. Somewhere around 25% of the total population. So
Okay.
when you tell persons that, they always seem astonished, like, how do you guys manage?
Hmm.
you know and tourism is the main industry, and of course, with our population size, that means we can't supply uh you know enough bodies to the labor force, hence the large foreign labor force,
Yeah,
to
important labor.
actually keep the tourism industry going.
Yeah. Which is similar to, I guess, a lot of the other OTs because all of us have um, a high volume of expatriate workforce that puts a strain, I would say, when it comes to our immigration and labor policy and having a balance to make sure that unemployment of our locals is something that's paid
Mhm.
attention to, and having I would say, a employable workforce is also one of the challenges that we have here. So we might have bodies, but then there are these specialties that show up in some areas or some industries that now have to be, you have to be equipped for. So I
No,
see Chris
absolutely.
disappeared on us, but hopefully he pops back in soon. So
Hopefully, but you're absolutely right. You're correct. One of the things I always say, as a region, I don't think we do well enough, especially in the territories. I don't think we do enough population growth planning,
hmm.
and I'm an advocate of population having a population growth policy that defines, how you're going to grow the population, the skill sets you need within the population. The TCI a few years ago did an assessment, a labor force assessment, where we looked at the different jobs in the economy, the number of persons in those jobs, whether foreign or local, the skill sets needed. So we're now starting to use that information to design a few policies in terms of labor and immigration and those other things. Like every other country, it's not perfect. Um, Sometimes you don't know what the pitfalls are until you actually put it out there, and so things are changing.
Yeah.
So we're trying to ensure that we cater in the best possible way to our people. The government right now is going through a capacity building exercise. It's really
Hmm.
focusing on building capacity within the public service itself. So in a lot of in-house training, I participated recently in a introduction to public policy workshop, and consequently ended up presenting on policy communication during the workshop, which is one of the things that I love. I absolutely love public policy, and earlier this year I decided to get certified in it. Just out of personal interest, but really and truly as a way of also adding to my skill set and making me more versatile and employable. So I try to encourage persons to take on other things. If there's something out there that interests you, make yourself marketable.
Hmm. So we do have one of our viewers agreeing with you there, Damien, in terms of population growth planning. Because just the other day when I was on vacation and I stopped off in Bahamas, I was shocked at the size of their population. Even though
So
it's
they're about what, 300,000 now, or close
I
to
think she quoted the
400,000?
taxi driver quoted 400.
Yeah, about 400,000. Because I remember they were always 10 times the size of our population. So that's
Okay.
how I remember the Bahamas population. I always say, all right, just multiply TCI by 10.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and again, it's because you have that migrant population that's moving throughout the Caribbean, really. Because, in the space of 10 years, it can grow and expand. I remember being surprised, I think it was earlier this year, where the USVI announced that their population had shrank by over 10%
Wow,
because
that's a
of the migration.
considerable.
Yeah, it's a lot. And apparently, again, with the hurricanes that had happened and then other crises that were happening on the ground, like in St. Croix, the closure of the Hess oil plant, there was
Mm.
basically a steady exodus. But then now, again, we're not counting in between the censuses. So it's like you don't realize it now until you have at this point. So they have been actually actively recruiting persons to come back home. They've had, I think, 2 job fairs this year in the U.S. To encourage the locals to come back home and to participate, because again, there's a labor force shortage because of that. Because they literally are not there.
Actually, you've give that's a really great idea to have job fairs overseas, to interact and engage the diaspora. I think TCI doesn't do enough of that because we have a significant diaspora population. Persons estimated to be at least half the size of our local population, and those persons have a range of skills. Because I know doctors, nurses, teachers, engineers,
Hmm.
scientists. There are Turks and Caicos Islanders overseas.
Yeah.
Like on Saturday, we're going to have an NFL player, Fayon Dix, was just drafted to the NFL, and he's from the TCI.
Hmm.
So you have. I don't think we tap into the diaspora enough.
Enough,
And
yeah.
as that, I think the name of the fan just now was Janet. She was saying that education doesn't do a good job of preparing students for the workplace, and I tend to agree with that. I think education across the region needs to be rethought, um, because when you look at places like Japan and Malaysia, and I think we're afraid to address it, especially in the hospitality industry, where robots are bartenders, robots are cleaners. Like I think it's Japan now that is starting not to actually employ cleaners because robots clean most buildings. Robots are waitresses, masseuses, and the technology is going to get cheaper, more
Uh,
accessible. And what do you think is going to happen to the Caribbean region? It's a conversation we need to start having now because we're so dependent on that industry. And
mhm.
if you look across the world, they're literally replacing human beings with robots. Now, do I believe that every human being is going to be replaced? No, I don't really believe that. But it means that we need to reskill and retrain persons, and maybe definitely upskill some people. And it's better we start having the conversation now than waiting till it starts happening to us, and then we feel like something's being imposed on us.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about earlier. One of my device crashed. One of the challenges that we have in the OTs, we have a sort of double-edged sword in that we have, comparatively speaking, in the Caribbean region, we have the best economies, for lack of a better word. And in TCI, BVI, and Bermuda especially, we have tourism products. All of us have tourism product. TCI, you have a better tourism product than most islands at present.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is that we have a
And
growing
are
tourism
growing
product.
very fast.
Right. We have a growing tourism product in all of our islands. But our people, our native indigenous people, don't want to work in all parts of those industries.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge is that in order for those products to grow, you got name brand hotels, you got more cruise ships, whatever you may call it. You need more hospitality workers. So the double-edged sword is, on one hand, your industry is growing, but on the other hand, you're gonna have to import workers from neighboring islands, or in Bermuda's case, we import a lot of Eastern Europeans to work in the hospitality region. So then the double-edged sword for the people and for the governments is that, oh, you're giving away all these work permits, oh, all these foreigners are taking the jobs. And
So our special guest is here, Chris.
oh, our special guest.
Yes.
All right.
He beat the odds.
Yes.
Oh, look at him. Hey, Premier, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How's everyone doing?
How did my people down Seacow Bay treat you, man?
Oh, they
Oh,
kept me
sorry,
very.
Shayna's people.
They kept me very long down in Caicos Bay. I want to apologize to the viewers and the listeners of Territories Talk. Of course, I certainly intended to be here a lot earlier, but of course, the meeting in Caicos Bay here in the Virgin Islands ran a bit longer, and I got held up, unfortunately. But I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so I'm Premier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to the people of Territories Talk. You're the second Premier of overseas territory. You're the second leader in the Caribbean that has graced us on this show. Yep. So I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Miss Shaina Smith Archer. I think you know her, and Mr. Damian Wilson from Turks and Caicos Island. He's a friend of the territory. Friend of all of us, and I'm going to allow them to do what they do best. So thank you once again, Premier, and I will be watching from afar, not far, but afar.
He'll be right there.
Yeah, don't drift off too far.
No.
All right. Well, yeah. Again, Mr. Primary, thank you for being able to squeeze us into your schedule. We do know we had a conflict, so we were playing it by ear. So we're really glad that it worked out. And of course, persons logged on immediately and they're like, "Where is the Premier?" And it was like, "He'll be here shortly. He's coming." So we got that. All right. So we'll get right into it. Again, for persons who may not know, this is our Honorable Premier Dr. Natalio D. Wheatley of the Virgin Islands, and we are happy to have him tonight. He is the head of the Government of National Unity. So again, we've talked on the show about things that have been happening here on the ground as it relates to Commission of Inquiry. So Premier, they're very well versed in some of these things. So of course, we're going to be looking for you to update us a bit on it. But before we get into that, share with us in terms of how you got into politics. We know this was your first term being elected in 2019, but you're not new to politics. So let's start there and share with our audience about yourself.
Thank you, Shaina. Similar to you, I was away to school some years ago. Of course, many of us educated in the Virgin Islands and went away to do our studies and come back with a passion to serve our people. And I came back with a passion to see my community advance. I always had a passion for helping people, and I wanted to get involved in the governance and the affairs of my country. So I returned to the Virgin Islands late 2006. And of course, I got fully involved in what was taking place at the time. I would say I wasn't the most pleased with what was taking place in the territory at the time. There was a development happening in an area of the Virgin Islands called Beef Island that I wasn't pleased with because of the environmental impact of it and also the social impact. And that brought me to political life. And of course, that particular administration ended up losing the elections, and the Virgin Islands Party administration took office. And the Virgin Islands Party at that time, I wasn't happy with the governance that they were providing to the territory, and there were a number of projects that they were embarking on that did not meet my favor. And so, considering that the two main parties at the time were not taking the territory in the direction that I thought it should be going as a citizen, I decided to throw my hat in the ring, so to speak. And we had a party by the name of the People's Patriotic Alliance, which I would say I was privileged to be able to be in that party along with yourself, Shaina Smith Archer.
Yeah, I was Shaina Smith at the time.
Shaina Smith, and back then, when you look at the pictures, that was about it's about
2011.
Yeah, 2011, and you could see the milk in our faces.
Yes, sir.
And that really was, I would say, a great experience for me from a political standpoint. Of course, we only had, I think, 4 persons who ran. We did not have a full slate of candidates, but certainly it was a good experience for me, being able to enter into the political arena, being able to go up around the territory and to speak to persons, know what persons really wanted to see in the improvement of their governance. And, many persons at the time, Shaina, told us, don't give up. You're young, don't give up.
Yeah.
And keep fighting, because we believe that you have something great to offer to the territory, even though, of course, you're a bit young, your party is new, and you only had 4 persons as opposed to 13. And of course, from there, after that, the following election, I joined another small third party called the People's Empowerment Party. And again, I was unsuccessful at the polls. But following that election experience, I had the opportunity to join the Virgin Islands Party, which is the main opposition party at that time to the ruling National Democratic Party. And I became the president of the Virgin Islands Party and later became a candidate. And in 2019, I was successful in my bid for a seat in our House of Assembly. And I'm thankful to God, and I'm thankful to the people of the territory and the people of my constituency for giving me the opportunity to be able to serve. I was appointed as, at that time, the Minister of Education and Culture, along with some other subjects in my portfolio, and eventually appointed as Deputy Premier. And of course, persons would know that just a number of months ago, very unfortunate circumstances involving the former Premier of the Virgin Islands led to me being appointed as Premier of Government of National Unity, which is a coalition between 3 different parties: the Virgin Islands Party, for which I'm chairman of, the National Democratic Party, and also the People's, the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement. Three parties. And of course, in this government of national unity, our main task right now is reform. We had the Commission of Inquiry, that, of course, I'm happy that the listeners are familiar with it, so I don't have to go into, entire background of the Commission of Inquiry. But of course, Sir Gary Hickenbottom, the commissioner who is appointed to do this report, produce the report, and of course, the United Kingdom government accepted this report. The government of national unity put together an agreement and a framework to show how we can implement the recommendations of these reports within a democratic framework, as opposed to it being implemented through the United Kingdom government implementing direct rule through a governor who would appoint an advisory committee and implement the reforms and govern the Virgin Islands, having all legislative and executive authority. And why I'm a bit late is because, of course, we've been going around the Virgin Islands, speaking to persons about the implementation of the recommendations of the COI report, speaking to them about reform, hearing their views about the direction of the Virgin Islands, interacting with them. And of course, we are happy to be able to lead the Virgin Islands at this time, even though it's very difficult time in the Virgin Islands right now. But we believe we have the talent, we believe we have the young, enthusiastic minds, the experienced persons in our communities to be able to provide us with what we need to be able to reform the Virgin Islands and to move forward in our aspirations for self-governance.
Awesome. So for persons that may be brand new, I think they have the nutshell now. Yeah. Damian, over to you. I know you have some burning questions for the premier, so go right ahead.
Definitely. I mean, Dr. Wheatley, as you know, TCI went through its own commission of inquiry, and of course, our constitution, unlike yours, was suspended, and we did go through an interim government administration ran by the then governor, and a consultative forum and advisory council. So similar recommendations. I've read through your COI report, and it's essentially the same playbook. Now, my first question I want to ask, given that you guys have now formed this government of national unity, and you've put this proposal forward to the United Kingdom government to carry out the recommendations yourselves in a democratic manner, I want to ask, how is that going? Do you guys agree with with all of the recommendations? And if not, which one you think is of most concern to persons in the Virgin Islands?
Very good question. I would say thus far, it's going well from my perspective. I believe we've been able to get a good start in terms of the reforms. But I think the key for us is going to be really the democratic process, making sure we maintain the integrity of the democratic process, as opposed to just implementing reforms on behalf of the governor or the United Kingdom. So for each recommendation, there needs to be some level of consultation. And the people of the Virgin Islands need to be able to have a voice. And we're early in the process, and it's something, of course, that has to be tested. Because the true test is when the people of the Virgin Islands have a particular perspective and a particular view, how well is that respected? I think that is a test of the democratic process. And of course, we have some areas of the recommendations which are some touchy topics. You have the issue of residency and belanger status. I know TCI has a similar profile to the Virgin Islands, similar population. Of course, we have similar aspects of our economy, etc. And so you would understand how touchy a topic that belonga status and residency
Very
can be.
touchy in TCI.
Yes, of course, we have other aspects of things right now. We're looking at the topic of public servants registering their interests. And I know that's something that TCI, a reformed TCI, has already gone through, and I'm sure that we can benefit from your experience at TCI. But of course, that's something that is taking a lot of discussion and a lot of debate about, how to register your interests. What's best practice as it pertains to that? How do you protect persons' privacy? How do you protect persons' right to have their data protected? How do you strike the balance between transparency, anti-corruption measures, and protecting individuals, the rights of individuals? And I think those type of discussions that we have to have with the community will determine our success or failure in the implementation of the reforms. We certainly have to balance the interests of the people versus, of course, what has been recognized by the United Kingdom and the people of the Virgin Islands, I might say, who have been concerned about governance in the Virgin Islands for some time. So we have to balance those concerns of the various stakeholder groups against, of course, what it is we're ultimately trying to achieve in being a model democracy. And let me just say, Brother Damian, I want to extend thanks to the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands. I want to extend thanks to Premier Missick for the support that he and his government have provided to the Virgin Islands. He wrote a letter, of course, to the United Kingdom government, to Minister Millen, on behalf of all the overseas territories. And I want to certainly extend thanks as well to Premier Bott, to Premier Webster, to Premier Farrell, to Premier Webster, Panton,
Yeah.
Premier Panton from the Cayman Islands, for the support that they extended to the Virgin Islands in our time of need.
Definitely. I mean, the people of the TCI understand what you're going through, and we definitely empathize with the Virgin Islands. As you said, you guys have similar concerns to what we had and still have. I mean, the immigration situation is still a concern. I know there's a lot of speculation in the Virgin Islands about what happened with immigration. I think some of it is misleading and incorrect. But registering your interest is definitely another one. I know the government here has had some challenges with getting persons to sit on boards and committees simply because people say, it's too much to declare. I myself, as a senior public servant, I have to declare every 2 years. And sometimes this year when I went through the process, I started thinking to myself, is there something I forgot? Do I include my online accounts? Do I include PayPal? Do I, so there are those questions, that you will have. But given that this is something the UK government, people see it as something the UK government is imposing, right? And you're trying to make it more of a democratic process. Would you say that the BVI or you, your government, has a good relationship with the governor, and how does that impact, carrying out this exercise in democracy? Trying to ensure that the people aren't, this isn't imposed on them, but this is something that they have a voice in.
And really, that's the balance that we have to strike, a very difficult balance, of course. The relationship right now is good, and the reason why I say it's good is because, of course, I believe that the principles of democracy have been respected in the very beginning. The decision to not impose direct rule, I think, was a good start to this kind of new relationship, this newly invigorated relationship, which, of course, under the previous regime had become very strained. Relationship was not very good, and we kind of had a new start right now. And I believe the decision to not impose direct rule was a good start. But of course, just like I said before, we are seeking to take ownership of this process, take ownership of reform. We've accepted the fact that we need to reform. There are lots of areas that persons have complained about for many years, and we have taken it upon ourselves to use this opportunity and not let this crisis go to waste, but use this as an opportunity to seek to improve and become the model democracy that would make our people and the people in the region and the people in the world proud. And of course, the COI has recommendations, but we believe that the recommendations are broad enough that the people of the Virgin Islands can really have a voice in terms of how they're implemented. And I believe that once the governor and the United Kingdom respects the democratic rights of the people, respects the rights of the people to have a voice, and not simply to impose things in a way that's very one-sided, I believe that we'll get along fine. We'll get along well. Of course, there'll be some areas and some aspects that will cause some debate, some discussion, and some tension. But I believe it's in everyone's best interest, including the United Kingdom's best interest, to ensure that we continue to have constructive dialogue and that we walk through whatever issues may arise at any particular time. And I believe if we do that, if we take that constructive approach instead of a heavy-handed or a one-sided approach, I think we'll be just fine. And thus far, I think we've been okay so far.
Now, given all that you've said, Dr. Wheatley, I want to ask, is there or do the government of national unity envision a specific timeline for this process, and what does that look like?
Well, initially we set out 2 years to implement the reforms. The tricky part of it is elections are due sometime in May. So the government of national unity will do its part up until elections. Of course, with elections, of course, we would prepare ourselves for whatever the result is, and the new administration would have to continue with the reforms. But quite a bit of our reforms will be completed before the election. But there will be aspects of it that will come after the election. Persons are concerned about some of the tight deadlines. We have a framework that we agreed with the United Kingdom that has some very tight deadlines on it, and persons have been very concerned about these tight deadlines. But thus far, we've been doing a good job of meeting our obligations. I believe, we kind of front loaded a lot of the obligations. So in fact, after July 31st, we'd be finished with over half of our obligations that we committed.
That's definitely a rapid pace.
Yes, it's a very rapid pace, but we want to ensure, of course, that while we are focused on meeting our targets and our deadlines, that we maintain the integrity of the legislative process and the policy-making process, and that we provide enough time for consultation. So it's a lot of work, I have to say to you. It's a lot of moving parts at the same time, and we really are seeking the assistance of, first of all, the Virgin Islands population, the resources we have within our community, as well as the resources available among our brothers and sisters in the region. And I have to say to you that we've done, I've been very impressed by the support that we've been given, not only by our OT brothers and sisters, but also our CARICOM and OECS brothers and sisters.
That's definitely good. I mean, because the theme of tonight's show, when we did the opening, we were talking about Caribbean unity, and how we can better work together as a region. I always tell persons I'm a regionalist at heart. I believe in the Caribbean region. I believe we have the resources and the know-how to do what we need to do, and to be the best little region of the world. But I must commend, the government of national unity for taking a mature approach to the political process, and forming such a government. We often say in the region that coalitions don't last and they're not workable. So in that regard, you took the opposite approach to TCI, and I want to ask, in terms of the government of national unity, and with elections right around the corner, I think some 10 months away or less. Do you think it will survive till the next election? Is there unity in the approach, and will you guys contest the election as a government of national unity, or do you plan on going back to your separate camps?
Well, it's a very difficult question you asked, but of course,
We wanted to look into the crystal ball.
yeah, it's a good question that you asked actually. Um, I think just like you said, you commended us for forming our government of national unity. Many persons in the community commended us for forming a government of national unity, because of course it's sometimes rare, because persons have their own egos. Of course, sometimes you have to let your ego take a back seat, and you have to do what's in the national interest as opposed to what's in the interest of any particular party. I think with the reforms and with the crisis that we face, it's a national issue, and you want all hands on deck, and you don't want partisan interests to take precedence over territorial interests. And I think a government of national unity is an excellent way to go about implementing reforms. It's almost like some built-in transparency, I would say, because of course, you cannot take decisions in favor of any particular party, because of course the coalition would fall apart. It wouldn't work. And I surely hope that the coalition lasts even beyond the next election, because of course, sometimes when you're arguing and fighting, you really forget how like-minded you actually are. The members who came across from the different groups, we agree on a lot more than we disagree on. And I believe that it's in the best interest in the people of the Virgin Islands for us to continue working together in the best interest of the people. Now, what form and what shape that takes in the future, I'm not quite sure. But I do know that we need everybody working and being on the same page. And it's not to discount the role of the opposition. The opposition has a very important role in terms of holding the government's feet to the fire. You'll always need an opposition to be able to do that. But of course, I like the idea of all hands on deck and everybody working together.
And thank you very much, Dr. Wheatley, for that response. And I definitely agree. I think it's in the best interest of the nation that political leaders do set, their egos aside, and try to work together in the best interest of all. Shane, I could go on, but I'm sure you have questions that you would want to pose to Dr. Wheatley.
Well, we actually have some audience questions I'd like to probably insert here,
Okay.
just to divert a bit. So we have one question here for you, Mr. Premier. Will you consider independence? And if yes, what will it take for the BVI to get there?
Well, definitely independence is a decision for the people of the Virgin Islands that they will express through a referendum. But certainly, I think if we're ever to take that step, it will be because we have helped to mature our institutions. We've helped to build up those independent institutions that can help that can hold the politicians' feet to the fire, that can keep us accountable, that we emphasize transparency, accountability, good governance, respect for the rule of law, the efficiency and the effectiveness of our systems and processes. And those things build confidence among the people. I believe the people of the OTs are no less than any group from any other place in the world. I believe we do have the ability to govern ourselves. I think in a lot of ways, our development has been retarded and has been stunted based on the relationship that we've had with our administering power. But I think it's good that there's an awakening among the people, that we have to mature, that we have to grow, that we have to mature our politics, that we ensure that the best interests of the territory is at heart of everything that we do, and that we form relationships. I think the territories talk bodes well for our future, that we realize that we have partnerships that go beyond the shores of our individual territories, and that we'll utilize the resources which are around us, that we have access to help us in the event, of course, that we take the step of going independent, or we choose to have a free association with another state, because of course independence isn't the only option that we have available to us. So we've been attending the UN decolonization meetings. We've been reporting to them every year. They've actually passed some resolutions on the BVI supporting our right to self-determination, and we're going to continue reporting. We're going to continue going through the process, and certainly we are hopeful that the United Kingdom will be supportive of us in that, along with our brothers and sisters in the region.
Okay, awesome. I have two more, and just also for our viewers, in case you are tuned in via radio or TV, we actually are posting the document. So I posted the COI, the Commission of Inquiry report, as well as the government's implementation framework. So we have those up there online. So feel free to go and check those out after the program. Second question. I know tourism is one of the BVI's main economic drivers, but are you considering diversification?
Yes, absolutely. That's another excellent question. Our two main economic pillars here in the Virgin Islands is financial services and tourism, and those industries have served us well. But of course, external shocks and even natural disasters, in the case of tourism, can have impacts on those two main economic drivers. And we've spoken for many years about economic diversification as a means of making our economies more resilient and to continue to produce business opportunities, job opportunities, and government revenue. Many areas have been explored, but I think what we really need to do as a government and what we're focusing on is helping to empower our people to be able to provide that diversification through the empowerment of our business community, by helping them get access to capital, by being able to streamline processes, that cutting out the bureaucracy, helping to facilitate government way more than we have in the past, to make linkages between the tourism industry and other budgeting industries, small businesses, allowing our businesses to grow, to develop, and to prosper, because it's not necessarily always the government that has to come up with the ideas in terms of how you take your economy forward. If you unlock the potential of your people and unlock the potential of the private sector, your own people will come up with the means of being able to develop and diversify the economy. Certainly, agriculture and fisheries is an area where we do have potential, but we have to do exactly what I just mentioned, which is empower persons to be able to go into those industries, providing them with the incentives that they need, whether we have to change legislation, whatever we have to do to make those areas very attractive for persons to invest in and to be able to create value for the people of the Virgin Islands. We've explored other areas, of course. We've spoken about gaming. We've spoken about medicinal cannabis. We've spoken about a lot of different areas. And
And
even
someone also mentioned the blue-green economy, and I know that's something we've also been discussing as part of our national plan.
Absolutely, and we've gotten excellent assistance from the UN Development Program, the UNDP, on developing our blue economy roadmap. And certainly we have some excellent plans, but now is the time to execute some of those plans. And I should say as well, when it comes to alternative energy, that is yet another economy that we are seeking to utilize. The island of Anguilla will soon have a solar project which will provide upwards of 85% of that island's energy needs. And we are becoming more aggressive about going into the green economy and going into alternative energy in particular.
Okay. All right, so we'll take one more and then we'll switch back to some of what we had. So our water is going to be in the control of the Virgin Islands or the UK?
Yes, well, it's a very interesting question. In some instances, very complicated. But our waters, which is we have a exclusive economic zone, and it's about Shane about 200 nautical miles. Is it?
I think that's the number, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a vast resource that we have here. We have excellent fishing waters, and of course, the Virgin Islands is in control of those fishing waters, and of course, the resources that we have under the ocean is in control. Of course, we are signed on to some international treaties, and of course, our international waters. The United Kingdom does have some responsibility for our the international waters. So in some areas there is a partnership. But of course, as it pertains to our fishing grounds, being able to utilize our waters for research purposes, etc. Yes, we are in control, but I have to say to you that we have quite a strong partnership with CFES, which is the department in United Kingdom dealing with the environment and other areas. And we have some strong partnerships with international agencies that provide us with a great deal of support. But yes, if you're talking about things like fishing and things like that, of course, we are in control of our own waters.
Okay.
Premier Wheatley, can I interject here and just ask, as someone that has worked in the governor's office in TCI for a number of years and working along with the UK government as the environmental lead for governor's office in TCI, I know there's the UK Blue Belt program, which we had started working on the TCI getting signed up to, and they finally gotten signed up to the UK Blue Belt program this year. I think they're the only country, the only territory in the region, because it's really more the Pacific territories that have been signed up to the Blue Belt. Is that an option that the BVI may be looking at in terms of funding the blue economy development?
Yes, actually, I have to double check, but I think we may have had some involvement in that Blue Belt initiative. We've gotten some funding from the United Kingdom as it pertains to the Darwin Fund. The Darwin Fund has provided us with
The
some
Darwin Plus.
Darwin Plus Fund. We've gotten some resources from Darwin Plus, but I'm pretty sure that we may have done something with the Blue Belt Initiative as well. I have to double check with our kind of resident expert on that here in the as a form, I'm currently the Minister of Fisheries, of Agriculture and Fisheries, and I was before when I was in the Ministry of Education as well. And, of course, my team has had a strong engagement with the United Kingdom on some of these particular programs. In fact, I would say that the United Kingdom seems more enthusiastic to partner on issues of the environment, things that have to do with your, research, blue economy, etc. They seem very much interested in those areas. So we have participated in quite a bit of initiatives through the United Kingdom government. But as it pertains to the Blue Belt Initiative, I'll certainly have to get back to you on that. But I do think that we've had some involvement there.
Okay.
Okay, so Damian, let's take a quick media shout out break to say thank you to all our media partners across the region who have come on board in terms of either broadcasting live or replaying Territories Talk. So we want to thank Cayman Marl Road Facebook page. They carry it live as we are broadcasting. Montserrat's ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Saba, PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados's CBC Channel 8. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On behalf of my co-host team, thank you. All right. So where do we go from here, Damian? Because we have to start wrapping up in a few. Let me see if I see any more questions. I don't think I see any more questions. But Premier, I know in our newsreel when we opened up, we mentioned that the heads of government, the CARICOM heads of government recently met this past week, I think it was. Last week. So what in terms of, again, the theme of Caribbean unity, how is, I guess, the relationship amongst CARICOM, especially as it relates to the OTs? And I know our current status as a member is as associate. Do you see that changing, or, how are we managing that relationship right now?
It's a very interesting question, Shaina. We have a territory, which is Montserrat, who's a full member of CARICOM.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued by that, and of course, being a territory and being a full member, and I think it's something that we should at least explore the possibility of becoming a full member of CARICOM, of course, in consultation and dialogue with our people. And the same thing with OECS, because I do believe that there will be benefits to be derived from that. At the CARICOM meetings, many of the heads have recognized that there has been over the years a certain level of inertia in CARICOM, and that it's necessary to start ensuring that you hit some of these targets and get certain things going. For instance, they were talking a lot about the Caribbean single market economy and how we get that moving. And the CARICOM heads have adopted an approach that I believe that will provide more progress than it has in the past. Because, of course, as opposed to trying to get every single CARICOM member state on board, they're starting to form the coalitions of the willing. So they'd have single initiatives or individual initiatives, and the CARICOM member states who would like to participate in those, they would become a part of it, and then, of course, they would continue with the initiative as opposed to waiting on persons, everybody to get on board.
Yes. Okay.
And then, we're seeing that very soon we're going to have very strong partnerships as it pertains to transportation, shipping, food production. We were in Suriname recently, which is right next to Guyana in South America, and they have such great agriculture and they have such great potential for even more growth there. And Suriname recently discovered oil. They have oil. Guyana as well. It's been well publicized that they've discovered oil as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of course, we know how um, I would say how lucrative oil is right now. Everybody see the gas prices right now, and how much of a finite commodity oil is. That's why
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us are moving towards alternative energy. But they expect to have an economic boom as a result of that oil discovery. And I believe that Suriname and Guyana is very strong proponents of the CARICOM journey,
Mm-hmm.
are very much focused on how that economic boom can benefit the Caribbean. And I think you're going to start to see more food produced in places like Guyana and Suriname and places like that start to feed Caribbean countries and Caribbean territories.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we want it to be also provide opportunities for other member states, whether associate or full members, to be able to benefit from intra-Caribbean trade.
Yeah.
The CARICOM is also adopting an industrial policy. And this industrial policy, I believe, will be an excellent opportunity for the Caribbean to be a producer of goods as opposed to just a consumer of goods. You know, we see opportunities where we'll start to be able to produce products, and as opposed to just importing those products from outside the region, we can produce and trade those products among ourselves, and even have relationships with um, with nations outside the region, and help to be able to provide shipping routes between the islands.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an exciting time, I would say, to be a member of CARICOM. We have very strong leaders like Gaston Brown and Mia Motley and Ralph Gonzalez and President Ali from Guyana and forces like that, who, Prime Minister Skerrit and others who are really driving a very progressive agenda in CARICOM, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I believe that we should at least have a discussion about whether we want to be involved more fully as a Virgin Islands people, and the benefits to be derived by becoming full members.
Okay. Awesome.
Dr.
So,
Wheatley, one question before you go. I just want to interject one question, Shana. Given that we're
right.
talking about connecting the region, right? I've always wondered, do you feel as a leader of a OT, do you feel that we would benefit from an OT shipping line that would connect the various different OTs, where we could have trade among the territories?
Yeah, I didn't think of the shipping part, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's something worth exploring. I think what would be really great. We've been having territories talk, and I exchanged this idea with Shayna. I think I spoke to
You
Member
mentioned
of
it the first.
Parliament
Yeah.
Famous as
Yeah.
well. The opportunity for us to have some little summits,
Mm-hmm.
because as OTs, I don't think we know enough about each other. We don't know enough about each other's economies, and we have so many similarities as OTs. I think there are so many areas for collaboration, and even from an economic standpoint in terms of trade. I think trading among the OTs is a good idea, but I also think trading among all the different Caribbean countries, including those outside of CARICOM, like the Dominican Republic and
Mm-hmm.
places like that. Intra-Caribbean trade, I believe, is the way to go. But the
Yeah.
OTs, I think, because we have so many similarities, I think we have to explore ways that we can form an even deeper relationship. We have the Joint Ministerial Council. We have the Pre-Joint Ministerial Council, where we have a strong relationship between the leaders of the OTs. But I
Mm-hmm.
think when we'll really start to make some progress is when we can see a cooperation between the business communities in the OTs, between public servants in the OTs, between civic society in the OTs. And I think you all have really started it by having a dialogue, just having a conversation that's heard across the OTs. I think is going a long way in terms of the concept,
Mm-hmm.
solidifying the concept of OT unity.
Yeah. All right, we have one more audience question, and then we're gonna start a wrap up, Damien. Um, I guess this touches on our initial or earlier conversation about immigration and labor. And viewer would like to know what's your position on work permit exemption? Does he feel too many are issued, and are they far reaching into jobs that don't require a special skill set?
It's a very good question. We're in the attitude of reform right now, and one of the areas that needs reform is labor. We need labor reform and immigration reform because, of course, both of them work together.
Mm-hmm.
The principle that I would like to espouse, and of course, I think it has to do with a whole conversation that we have with our business community, a conversation that we have with our people in terms of what we're seeking to achieve in terms of our labor and immigration policies. Of course, a small population of people, and when our economy expanded, it attracted so many persons from so many different places.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and of course, we do face many tensions in the workplace right now because, of course, competing pools of labor from different places. Uh, the 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 position I would like to espouse is that we have an economy and we have a society that's able to produce a quality workforce. Of course, as I said, we have economy is really bigger than what we can provide from the inside. Okay, but we need to be able to produce a quality workforce from our persons who graduate from our high schools, who graduate from our community college, persons who return from college abroad. But then we have to be able to help to streamline our processes to be able to assist the business community to be able to find the labor
Mm-hmm.
that they need. As it pertains to work permit exemptions, we have to truly define what we're seeking to achieve in terms of the work permit exemption,
Mm-hmm.
and what purpose is it seeking to solve. I think if we can discover that, we could decide how we want to use it. But of course, work permits are a way in terms of controlling the expatriate labor. But ultimately, I think we want to go in the direction of developing our local labor. And then, of course, we have to refine our labor policies to ensure that businesses get the labor and the expertise and the skill set that they need. And at some point, start transferring that skill set and that labor, having persons who are in the local economy understudy, so
Mm-hmm.
those skills can be transferred. And in some instances, of course, there'll be some persons because of their overall positive contribution to the society that you want to become a part of your society to get some status as a part of your society. And of course, they'll no longer need work permits in that instance. So I would say it's a kind of very dynamic
Mm-hmm.
situation, a multifaceted situation, not anything that you can give a very simple answer to. But I believe we just have to ensure that we stay true to our principles.
Yeah.
And the principles we have is that we want to ensure that the persons within our society become trained and qualified to be able to participate in the economic activity in the territory,
Definitely.
and you have a process for persons who come from outside to be able to be a part of that, to supplement where you're not able to provide the labor from the inside.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I really want to thank our viewers. They're having a little conversation going on about the effectiveness of CARICOM and some other things. But I think Premier persons are very appreciative, just to let you know, in terms of your answers and getting information that they may have had questions on their minds about different things that's happening here with the territory, and how we move forward as a developing country, and in the bigger scheme of things, because we're part of the regional village as well as the global village.
Yes.
And there are so many moving parts as it was. So I don't envy your job.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, Damien, we don't envy his job at all. So, but I mean, one of the things I think somebody also commented was saying, again, they congratulate the team for being able to, at the point when it was needed to say, okay, let's come together and find a solution. And have that starting point, because for some persons they were lobbying for recommendation A1. That's like a bad word here now. But in terms of the suspension of ministerial government and what's happening there, so there's been quite a lot of vigorous debate, and I'm sure, Damien, you guys experienced it. And I kind of wanted to ask you, just
Yes,
as
we
a
did.
in terms of your reform process, is that still ongoing, or have you guys more or less done whatever came out of your commission of inquiry?
Really and truly, with our reform process, that is literally still ongoing. I mean, there were things that were imposed in the beginning, and some of that stuff has been repealed. Like we had a CEO and of the public service, and then we had a CFO, and those positions have been repealed based on our economic performance. We had certain laws that have been again repealed because of we've started to ingrain certain things within the society itself and within the processes of government. There's still more reform needed. There's still some tweaking. Persons have huge issues with the procurement ordinance, which was implemented as a result of the Commission of Inquiry. There's still issues over the actual governance process itself, and having more autonomy in a sense. But there were some good things that came out of it, like strengthening our financial procedures, and so when we look at how the TCI has performed economically, has performed from a governance perspective, it's been doing fabulous. So in the interim administration, or during the time of the interim administration itself, it was not ideal. It was very difficult for persons to go through. There was quite a lot of hardship, and there are persons who still have issues with something like immigration. It is a rolling issue. I don't know if we're ever going to fully reform it. There's been several proposals, and now there are counter proposals to change what was proposed by the Commission of Inquiry and other things. So it's ongoing. There are some things that have kind of been almost completed, and there are other things that are still fresh on people's mind and still fresh on the agenda of the government.
Okay. And it's interesting because the premier spoke about being in Sea Causeway tonight, and he was in West End last night, and we grilled him on a whole bunch of stuff. But I must say again, in terms of I'm glad you shared the experience, because again, TCI's experience was back in when, 2009.
Yeah, 2009 to 2012. So we're 10 years with our constitution reinstated.
Okay.
And even the whole integrity commission and process is still a sore point for many people, having to declare and all of that stuff. It's still, not as smooth as you would like it.
Okay. Well, that is awesome. Well, Premier, I'll give you back the floor to wrap up and give your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Again, I want to apologize for being somewhat late tonight, but I still think we were able to have a very meaningful and useful dialogue, and I certainly would like to be a real strong supporter of Territories Talk. Let me say how much I admire what you all are doing. Shaina Smith Archer, certainly I'm a great admirer of what you bring to the table, to the Virgin Islands and to the region as well. And Brother Damian Wilson, I'm grateful for being able to being able to have access to information about TCI and TCI's reform process. And of course, MP Famous. I'm grateful for him having the concept and the idea of being able to have this talk show that spans all the different OTs. I think it's an excellent initiative. Again, I want to thank all of the different premiers of the OTs for the kind support they've offered to the people of the Virgin Islands. And of course, I want to appreciate the people of the Virgin Islands for walking through this very difficult time in our history. I believe that we have the talent, we have the pure intentions, we have the positive energy, we have the skills, the talents necessary to be able to govern ourselves, to be able to implement these reforms, to strengthen our institutions, to improve our society, and to chart a course into a very prosperous future. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the next time when I'm on Territories Talk.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Premier, for your kind
Definitely.
words. I will definitely pass on your compliments to my co-host. Again, for those who are wondering where Eden is, he is on a much needed vacation. So hopefully he'll be back sometime in August. And we're going to have a special, I don't know, we're going to have something special for our first year anniversary premiere. It's going to be next month.
Already. Wow.
Yeah, already. So, you know, I was
1
talking
year.
1 year, and it's been quite an experience. And you know, we echo the sentiment because that was essentially the vision that we had in terms of, you know, let's have a regional conversation and see where it goes. And it has, you know, gone from Bermuda all the way down into Guyana and back. So, you know, we're really excited to see what's next. And the summit ideas is definitely something we have been talking about offline as well. And Chris is popping back up to say his good night and see where it goes from there, because we can only go from strength to strength because unity is our strength, and that's what we have to go into. Chris?
Yes, as I said, I was watching from afar. I just want to thank you, Premier, for your frank and open dialogue, because I know you're human. You're no different from any one of us. You could feel bogged down, you know, by those that you're trying to help and those that are trying to not help us. And I just want to thank you as a man to man, as
I
a
think Chris may
citizen.
have frozen.
Thank you.
You're good, Damian. We're seeing you.
Oh, I just want to
No,
thank you
I'm
as
saying I think Chris may have frozen, but yeah. But
We're
definitely,
hearing you.
Premier, I want to thank you for the opportunity. You know,
Yeah, thank you
Chris, you're
very
back.
much. Yeah, thank you very much. And Chris, I was hearing you. So
oh
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
sorry. No, I just want to thank you because as I am a born in Bermuda, but my mother's from BVI, so you're equally my premier as well. So I just want to thank you for all that you are doing. Thank Mrs. Wheatley for the sacrifices that she's making, allowing you to help keep our territory in safe hands. And I look forward to yourself and others of your national unity government being guests on Territories Talk. So that's it. That's it
Next
from Bermuda.
next time you're in Seacoast Bay, we'll have some coconut tat.
I mean, I have some thought for you, you mean.
And Damian, thank
Have a
you
good
for
night,
being our
everybody.
guest tonight. Persons have been congratulating you, so I think you're definitely going to be a fixture going forward.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. It was a wonderful opportunity. I always embrace any opportunity to and you know, engage with my OT brothers and sisters, and of course the wider region. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a regionalist at heart. I believe we have everything we need to be successful right here as a region.
Oh, sorry, Jamie. We didn't tell you this was your first night on the job.
But you told me, so I'm okay.
I was actually a candidate in 2016.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we're all in the same. So for those who may have been viewing for the first time tonight, be sure to like our Facebook page, Territories Talk, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Territories Talk, so that whenever we have a show schedule, you will get that notification and you jump right in and join us. So on behalf of my co-host team, thanks again to the viewers, the listeners, those who will, watch afterwards, for participation tonight. Great questions, guys. Keep them rolling. And until, I don't know, next show is 27, Chris, and then we're going to take some break. So
Break, what's that?
We'll see you guys back on the 27th of July. And then we'll let you know what we're doing for the first year anniversary. So we should have that plan in place by then. All right. So again, good evening, and let's continue to unite and inform our overseas territories family. Good night.
Good night from Turks and Caicos.
Good night.